Symbols are a subject that students of interpreting really like. It's one of the first things that they ask about when they're learning to do consecutive. But I think I want to start this film by saying the most important thing to say about symbols is that they won't solve many or any problems on their own. If you're not using symbols as part of a consistent and structured note-taking system, then the symbols aren't really going to help you. So I hope this film is useful. Please watch it, but please also remember that symbols have to be part of a bigger, consistent and structured note-taking system to be useful. Now, when students ask about notes, the two questions that they most often ask me are, where can I find symbols to use? And how many symbols should I have? And I actually think that those are the wrong questions to be asking. I think that the questions that you should ask yourself when you think about using symbols in consecutive note-taking are, why should I use symbols? What should I replace with symbols? And how should I use the symbols once I've got them? And that's what I'm going to say something about now. So why do we use symbols? Well, symbols are quicker to write and quicker to read back than words. Here's an example: development as a word or development as a symbol. Another reason why we use symbols is that symbols represent concepts rather than words, and that gives you a lot of freedom. So for example, this symbol is my symbol representing, or symbol I use, representing anything synonymous with help. So aid, help, assistance, support. And the fact that it's a symbol rather than any of those words means that I can choose which word to use when I'm interpreting, rather than having a word on the notepad page trap me into using only that word. So that's very useful and offers you a lot of flexibility. And I'm sure you'll hear your teachers say ideas, not words, many times over your interpreting course. Another reason we use symbols is that they save space on the page. Symbols take up less space than words, and that means you've got more space for the layout and the structure of your notes on the page, which will be clearer if you're using symbols rather than words. Again, here's an example of 2 pages of notes, one taken only with words and one taken with some fairly basic symbols. And I think you can see that where we use symbols, it just stands out more clearly on the page, and the structure of the notes is clearer on the page. So that was why we use symbols. Now what about what should we use symbols for? What do we replace with symbols? Well, I think there are 2 groups of things that we can look to replace with symbols. And the first, very obvious one, are those that recur all the time, again and again and again. So in the sort of speeches that you're going to be doing in consecutive, concepts like think, say, know, I'm happy to, thank you, support, to want, to suggest or propose, policy, industry, problem. That sort of thing is going to come up in pretty much every speech. So it's going to be useful to have symbols for them. To decide, to say, to think, to know, to be happy, thank you, support, to want, to propose, policy, industry, problem, country. The other thing that you might usefully want to replace with symbols are things that are going to come up a lot on one given day. So let's say, for example, today the subject of your mock conference or your practice session or your assignment is telecommunications. telecommunications is a very long word. You know it's going to come up a lot in the speeches you're going to be interpreting consecutively, so you want a symbol for it. And so you come up with a symbol. For example, this symbol here. You could choose any symbol you like, but for me this symbol is an antenna, and therefore telecommunications. And I will use it on that one day for the telecommunications meeting, and then forget it afterwards. Okay, so we've looked at why use symbols and what to replace with symbols. Let's look now at how to use symbols. And this is perhaps the most important part of today's film. If you're using symbols, any symbol you use has to be clear and unambiguous. And that's really absolutely crucial, unambiguous. So look at these symbols. The symbols here mean the euro, energy, the economy, and the environment. Now they're all based on the letter E, but they're all clearly different, and to me, I'm never going to mix them up. Each one is unambiguous. Next, symbols also have to be consistent. So, if I've chosen the capital E for energy, as we saw a moment ago, then it always has to be energy. I can't use the capital E tomorrow for environment and the next day for economy. Once I've decided that the capital E is energy, it stays energy. Next, prepare your symbols in advance. Don't improvise mid-speech. You might think, as you improvise a new symbol, that it's unforgettable and brilliant, but once you come back to reading your notes, you might well find under pressure that it's not quite as easy as you thought to remember what that clever symbol was, and then you'll find yourself making a real mess of your consecutive. So prepare your symbols in advance. Next, any symbol that you choose has to mean something to you. Don't just take a symbol and use it because somebody else is using it. And this is something that students very often do. They'll ask professional interpreters if they can tell them what symbols they use. Now, that can be an interesting source of inspiration. But if a symbol doesn't mean something to you, if it doesn't click for you, you should think very seriously about using it or not using it. So, for example, you might get new symbols from professional interpreters. But do they click for you? You might want to use symbols from mathematics, but if you don't really understand mathematics, the symbols there that you could draw on, like 3 dots for therefore, they might not stick in your mind, and so you shouldn't use them. The same goes for symbols that you might draw from science or from music. They're all very good places to get symbols from, but it has to work for you. Don't just use a symbol because you found a symbol or because someone else is using a symbol. And lastly, when it comes to how to use symbols, try to make your symbols organic. What do I mean by organic? Organic means that one symbol is a root from which you can build lots of other related symbols. The most obvious example is the arrow. So for example, this arrow means to rise. It's an arrow going up. This arrow means to fall, an arrow going down. Whereas this arrow, the vertical arrow, to me that is going down to 0, which is different from just reducing. Going down to 0 might therefore mean destruction, elimination, and the like. Or this arrow going backwards, which for me means to come from somewhere or to derive from. But they're all related, they all come from the same symbol, the arrow. Another classic example of one symbol serving as a root is this square box, which many interpreters use to denote country. Country, person from that country, national, nationality, nationalize. And then if the head is a person, that becomes to know, to think, surprised, happy. And then if you take that example of happy, you can use underlining to have very happy, delighted, so-so, not quite so, not sure about how happy I am. So to wrap up, good symbols will follow the rules that I've just outlined. And good symbols will, one, be easy to remember just because you followed these rules. And two, they'll be used very often. Again, because you've followed the guidelines that I've just given you. And because they're easy to remember, and because they're used very often, they will be remembered. You won't forget them. And in fact, I would go so far as to say that if you find yourself forgetting a symbol or symbols, then it's because it wasn't a good symbol, and you should allow yourself to forget it. Don't, please don't, learn lists of symbols like vocab lists at school. That's not helpful. Symbols will learn themselves as you use them in your consecutive practice. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say about symbols. Good luck and practice hard.